Hello. All right, and welcome back. We are going to talk about Rachel Speght now and her wonderful piece, A Muzzle for Melastomus. And that is how you pronounce that name, Melastomus. Melastomus. You can see two root words there. Mela meaning dark, or yeah, like a dark color, and stomus meaning mouth. So a muzzle meaning something that you put over like a dog, right? You muzzle dogs, the dog won't bark or bite. And melastomus meaning like a muzzle over the black mouth or the foul mouth or the dark mouth. So think about that imagery and how that interplays with her rebuttal that she's writing here. Because there was some black mouthing going on in the piece to which she's responding here. So we're going to get into that in just a minute. But first I'm going to show you what she looks like. I think I might have forgotten to show you in the last one what actually Mary Roth looked like. So I'll show you Mary Roth first, and then I will show you after that, I'll show you Rachel Speght. So here's Mary Roth, in case I forgot to show you Mary Roth. I can't remember if I did, but here it is again if I did. And we're just going to scroll down here, and here is Rachel Speght. All right. And of course, these paintings, these pictures of paintings are included in our lecture, so you can always refer to them again there if you'd like to see these ladies again. And of course, all of the hyperlinks that I put into the lectures are available through the lecture. So you can go onto the document of the lecture and click on those hyperlinks to kind of get a little bit more information if you still want to know more about the life and writings of Rachel Speght. And there's even a podcast about her from a literature lady. So she's got some intriguing and productive information about Rachel Speght, her life, her times, and her work. Although we don't have a lot of information about her. All right, I'm going to switch back to me so that you can see me, because sometimes it's a little bit more interesting to see a human being talking to you, right? And gesticulating and using facial expressions. All right, so Rachel Speght lived from around 1597 to at least 1630, but probably longer, probably a lot longer because of some information that we've dug up. And I believe this is new information from the time even that the anthology was written. So anyway, it puts her to about 33, but probably older when she died. And we'll get into that in just a minute. No record of Speight's death actually exists. All right, so that's why people conclude that she lived till at least 1630, because baptismal records imply she gave birth to two children, Rachel and William. Rachel in 1627 and William in 1630. And these children bear her name and her husband's name and identify the father as William Proctor, who was a minister in the parish where Rachel and her husband William lived. So that's why people concluded, yes, these are in fact Rachel and William's children. One was born in 1627 and another was born in 1630. Therefore, Rachel must have at least lived till 1630 because she gave birth to this child, presumably, in 1630. All right, but then some other records have emerged since then. Well, we have the record of Rachel Speight's marriage in 1621 to William Proctor, who became her husband, and it lists Speight's age at that marriage as 24. And interestingly, this record of her marriage not only does it list her name as 24, but it calls her a spinster. That's a little interesting. Presumably, they still have the same understanding of spinster that we do, which means you're an older unmarried woman, who is presumed not to maybe have who may never, who is presumed that she will never get married, basically, right? That's typically what we mean when we use the word spinster. So she, at the young age of 24, is listed as a spinster on her marriage record. Of course, that changes when she gets married. She's no longer a spinster, right? So different concept of marriageable age back then, right? Speight's father was a Calvinist minister named John Speght. We've talked about a lot of religious issues and strife and turmoil and tensions during this time period because, we saw England during the Renaissance go from being a Roman Catholic country, ruled by a king, but the king headed up in many decisions by the Pope. And Henry VIII didn't like that and wanted to make decisions for himself. So then he started his own religion called the Church of England, or the Anglican Church, which is, got a lot of similarities with the Roman Catholic Church, but puts the monarch of England as the head, and then has a few other departures too, and no longer acknowledges the Pope's authority. So anyway, John Speght is a Calvinist minister, all right? And so that's like going even farther from the another step away from the Roman Catholic Church, because Calvinism emerged as a religion that was rejecting a lot of Catholicism and even some of the beliefs that we would see in, say, even the Anglican Church. So anyway, that's her father, and then her husband, also William Proctor, was a minister too. So a lot of religion going on in this family. And of course, with religion goes education, right? Because if you were a religious leader, you had you had access to libraries, and you obviously had to read and write, because you had to be able to read the Bible and preach that to people. So clearly, the family was educated. Since he was a Calvinist minister, John Speght could be married and have children, right? Because, if you were a Roman Catholic priest, you couldn't. But Calvinist minister, he could. Some records indicate Speght may have had, Rachel Speght may have had a third child, actually, Joseph, in 1634. So that's why, this new information has emerged. And so people are thinking, well, she at least lived to 1630 because of the baptismal records of her first two children. But now this other record has emerged with a child being born in 1634. So such a birth would indicate that she lived at least till 1634. And then another record indicates that she and her husband were expelled from their parish in 1644, so 10 years after having had that child, over religious controversy. So again, remember, these times were so fraught with religious controversies. So you had people doing all sorts of things, from turning people in who weren't doing what they're supposed to do, who weren't going to church, or weren't espousing the proper beliefs, or weren't being Catholic when they were supposed to be Catholic, or weren't being Anglican when they're supposed to be Anglican, or, now they're even not Anglican or Catholic, they're something else, they're this other type of Protestant religion. And we have all sorts of forms sprouting up during this time period. It's truly the Reformation, right, where they're trying to reform a lot of the religious beliefs, and kind of what enabled that was the printing press, putting the hands of scripture in people's hands so that they, and educating people so that they could read the Bible themselves. And in reading the Bible themselves, people said, you know what you guys have been telling us all this time, I don't think that really jives with what I'm reading. Okay. And now that I can actually read it myself, now that it's not all just in Latin, and now that I can read something in a language that I understand, I'm kind of arriving at different interpretations from what you're telling me. And so that created a lot of religious conflict at the time, and people wanted to reform things to what they said was were biblical principles they found in the Bible through their own reading and study of it. So yeah, a lot going on, a lot happening religious wise during this time period. A lot of controversies and a lot of different churches going different ways. And of course, we had the Pilgrims come to America over religious conflict, right? They said, you know what? And they were Puritans. They wanted to purify the doctrines that they had been taught from the Bible. They were like, we're reading ourselves. And there was such an emphasis on doing your own reading and having your own personal relationship with Scripture. And previous generations, no, the priest had to always intervene between the lay person or the common person and the Bible. There was always that intervening step, so that if they controlled the information coming from the Bible, they could also, use that to support the opinions that they wanted people to have, and also support themselves governmentally and monetarily, so they could get people to believe certain things, so that they could get money and power. All right. So anyway, the Pilgrims, they left, England in 1620, came over here to the Americas to try to establish their own community and follow the beliefs that they thought and they found in the Bible. And so you see people doing similar things over in England, like Calvinist preachers. And of course, we read Anne Askew. She was constantly preaching about how she didn't think that the Church of England or the Roman Catholic Church were following principles that she saw in the Bible. All right, so anyway, they were expelled from their parish in 1644 because of some religious controversy. Not sure exactly what, but anyway, that record seems to indicate that Rachel lived at least till then, because it says that she and her husband were expelled. Her husband ended up dying in 1661, and Speght is not mentioned in his will, so she may have actually died before he did, because she's not mentioned in the will. But without a death record of Rachel herself, we cannot know for sure. Who knows? Maybe he left her out because I don't know. I don't know why. Either she died or she thought she was otherwise provided for. Who knows? Because we don't have any information. It's a sad story of these times for many people, but especially women, not considered important enough in many cases to keep records of. All right, in 1621, Rachel Speght, wrote the work Mortality's Memorandum, with a dream prefixed imaginary in manner, real in matter. All right, and the work consists of 2 poems, the second of which meditates on mortality and death. So it's the second poem mentioned in the title, a dream prefixed, imaginary in manner, real in matter. So a dream prefix, that's the second poem in the title, but it's actually the first poem in the book. So that makes sense. So that poem, a dream prefixed, is a tribute to 2 women who inspired Rachel, her godmother and her unnamed mother. So she doesn't name her mother in it, but she talks about her mother and also her godmother. Now, her mother had died recently, before this, right before the poem was written. And in fact, her mother's death inspired her to write this meditation on death and mortality. So, a dream prefix, which is the first poem, and that one talks about her Rachel Speight's quest for learning, actually. Kind of interesting. Oh, you know what? Here's the thing. The second poem, Mortality's Memorandum, with a dream prefixed, imaginary in manner, real in matter. So the second work talks about death and mortality. A dream prefixed, actually, sorry, I'm having to backtrack a little bit, talks about her quest for learning. So in that prelude poem, she says that in order to pursue knowledge, she had to overcome doubt of her own ability. And so, of course, women were fed constantly the idea that they couldn't learn, they shouldn't learn, they're not capable of learning, they're weaker, they're less capable. So she had to overcome those doubts that were fed her by society. And she also had to overcome people's dissuasion. So people saying women shouldn't pursue an education. And so that poem narrates her journey to overcome those doubts and those dissuasions. And she used the parable from the Bible of the talents. Some of you may be familiar with that. In the parable of the talents, it argues that people need to, like God gives people talents, and then people need to take those talents and make more of them. They're given those talents for a reason, to develop them and to use those talents to serve God and serve their fellow being, right? And so Rachel Speght used that parable to argue that because I'm given gifts from God, it is my duty to serve God, to develop those talents that he gives me. He wouldn't have given me talents if he didn't want me to develop them and do something with them to serve him. And so therefore, I have to develop my talents. So that was her argument for why she should pursue education and why she should be educated. So pretty smart, I would have to say. So anyway, she said she would be guilty of not carrying out God's will for the talents if she didn't pursue them and develop them and cultivate them and use them to bless humanity with. And so here she blesses us by writing these incredible pieces, her journey for knowledge and her meditation on mortality that was spawned by her mother and her godmother's death. All right, the poem indicates that because of duties wrought by her gender, her biological sex rather. She had to abandon her quest for